Admiral Tejo walked slowly across the metal floor of the biggest space station in the galaxy. His boots made loud, clicking sounds that echoed through the huge command center. The walls were covered with bright screens showing maps of 12-star systems that belonged to the Galactic Empire. For 300 years, his people had ruled these worlds with power that no one could match. Every alien race either worked for them or lived in fear of their mighty crystal warships. The morning started. Like any other day, hundreds of officers sat at their control panels monitoring trade routes and patrol ships. The Empire was strong and nobody dared to challenge them. Tejo felt proud as he looked at the displays showing their beautiful fleet. Moving through space like shining jewels, each ship was perfect with smooth crystal hulls that caught starlight and turned it into rainbow colors. Their plasma weapons could melt through any material and their antigrav engines let them dance through space faster than light itself. But then something changed. Lieutenant Sujin was working at the long-range scanner station when her screen started flashing red warning lights. She pressed buttons and checked the readings 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. Her hands shook as she turned toward the Admiral. "Admiral, sir," she called out in a voice that cracked with worry. "There is something on the outer sensors. Something big is coming toward our territory." Tejo walked over to her station and looked at the screen. The dot on the display was moving steadily toward their space, but it did not look like any ship in their database. The computer kept trying to identify it, but every few seconds the readings changed. The vessel appeared to be massive, but its shape made no sense to their instruments. "Show me the visual," Captain Minsu ordered from his position near the main display. The big screen flickered and then showed an image that made everyone in the command center stop breathing. The ship was huge, bigger than their largest battleship, but it looked nothing like their elegant crystal vessels. This thing was dark and ugly, made of rough metal that seemed to be patched together from different pieces. Steam poured out of vents along its sides and bright orange flames shot from massive engines at the back. The hull was covered with strange bumps and towers that stuck out at weird angles. Thick black smoke trailed behind it like the exhaust from an old factory. "What in the name of the stars is that thing?" Captain Minsu whispered. His face had turned pale and his eyes were wide with shock. The other officers gathered around the scanner trying to understand what they were seeing. The ship had no smooth curves or beautiful crystal panels. Instead, it was all sharp edges and brutal-looking metal. Everything about it screamed danger and violence. But the most frightening part was its size. The computer calculated that it was almost twice as long as their biggest warship and much thicker. Through the middle, Commander So Young ran more detailed scans, and her readings made the situation even more confusing. "Sir," she reported, "I am detecting massive energy output from that vessel, but it is not using any technology we recognize. No plasma cores, no crystal matrices, no antigrav systems. Instead, it has huge chemical rockets and what appears to be primitive ballistic weapons." "Primitive?" Tejo repeated. "That cannot be right. Nothing primitive could build a ship that large." The commander checked her instruments again. "Sir, the energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. The ship appears to be powered by controlled nuclear fusion reactions, the same process that powers stars, but that should be impossible. No species has ever been able to control fusion reactions safely for space travel." More alarming data kept coming in. The mysterious ship was not just big and powerful, it was also fast. Despite its crude appearance, it was moving at incredible speed, much faster than their patrol ships could travel. The chemical rockets should not have been able to push something so massive through space at such velocity. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo was monitoring communication frequencies when he made another disturbing discovery. "Admiral," he called out, "I am picking up transmissions from inside that ship. The signals are very faint, but they appear to be biological life forms. Carbon-based organisms with neural activity patterns." "Carbon-based?" So Young gasped. "That is impossible. Carbon-based life forms are primitive. They live on planets and use simple tools. No carbon species has ever developed space travel beyond their own solar system." But the scanner readings did not lie inside that massive, ugly ship. Were living, breathing creatures made of carbon and water, just like the primitive species they had conquered on distant worlds. But somehow these carbon beings had built something that dwarfed the Empire's finest technology. The ship continued its approach, ignoring all of their communication attempts. Tejo ordered his officers to send messages on every frequency they knew. Welcome messages, warning messages, and finally threatening messages, but the vessel just kept coming. Straight toward their territory, as if their mighty space station was nothing more than a small obstacle in its path. More details became visible as the ship got closer. The hull was covered with markings that their translation computers could not understand, strange symbols and letters that followed no linguistic pattern they had ever seen. Some sections of the ship glowed with heat while others were dark and cold. Steam and smoke poured from dozens of openings along its length, making it look like a flying volcano. The weapons on the ship were the most puzzling part of all. Instead of elegant plasma cannons or crystal beam projectors, this vessel bristled with crude metal tubes that looked like ancient ballistic weapons. But these cannons were enormous. Each one was bigger than a small fighter ship, and there were hundreds of them arranged in clusters all over the hull. Lieutenant Sujin reported with fear in her voice, "The ship is now entering our outer defense perimeter. Should we scramble?" The patrol fleet stared at the image on the screen. This strange vessel represented everything the Empire despised. It was ugly, brutal, and primitive, but it was also impossibly large and powerful. The contradiction made his head hurt. How could something so crude be so advanced? More troubling thoughts filled his mind. If carbon-based life forms could build ships like this one, what did that mean for the Empire? Their entire civilization was based on the belief that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds because no one else had technology that could match their crystal ships. But now something had appeared that made their proudest vessels look small and weak. The unknown ship was close enough now that they could see tiny figures moving around on its surface. These carbon creatures were working outside their ship in the vacuum of space without any protection except crude metal suits. They moved with purpose and efficiency, as if walking around in deadly space was normal for them. "Get me a direct line to the Imperial Palace," Taeho commanded. "This is beyond our authority. Emperor Kyungmin needs to know about this immediately." As the Admiral waited for the communication link to connect, he watched the mysterious ship continue its steady approach toward their territory. Nothing in his 3 decades of military service had prepared him for this moment. The Empire was about to encounter something that challenged everything they believed about their place in the galaxy. The fate of 12 star systems now hung in the balance, and it all depended on whatever was inside that ugly, smoking metal monster that had appeared from the depths of space. Emperor Kyungmin sat on his crystal throne in the center of the Golden Palace, his face red with anger that burned like fire. The throne room was massive, with walls made of pure crystal that caught light from 1,000 floating lamps and turned it into dancing rainbows. But today the beautiful colors could not calm the Emperor's rage. The news from Admiral Taeho had shaken him to his core. Some unknown species had dared to enter his territory without permission, and their ship was bigger than anything in his fleet. "How dare they?" the Emperor shouted so loud that his voice echoed off the crystal walls. "Some primitive carbon-based life forms think they can just fly into our space like they own it. Send the Third Fleet immediately. I want that ugly ship turned into space dust before the sun sets." The royal advisors standing around the throne tried to look calm, but their hands shook with nervousness. Grand Admiral Park Woo-jin stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should try to communicate with them first. They might have valuable technology we could use." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "Technology," he spat. "Those carbon creatures live on dirty planets and use stone tools. What could they possibly teach us? No, we will destroy them like we destroyed all the others who dared to challenge our empire." Within 1 hour, Fleet Captain Du-yun was leading 20 of the Empire's finest warships toward the unknown vessel. His flagship was called Crystal Dawn, and it was the most beautiful ship ever built. The hull was made of pure white crystal that glowed with inner light and weapons that could melt asteroids. The other ships in his fleet were just as magnificent, each one a masterpiece of engineering that had taken years to construct. Du-yun felt confident as he looked at his powerful fleet. These crystal ships had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed thousands of enemy vessels. No force in the galaxy could stand against their plasma cannons and energy shields. The ugly metal ship ahead of them would be easy prey for weapons that burned hotter than stars. Inside the human vessel Iron Thunder, Captain Lee, Jun-ho was not afraid at all. He stood on the bridge looking at the approaching alien fleet through thick metal windows. His ship might look rough compared to their pretty crystal vessels, but it carried weapons that could crack planets in half. Jun-ho had spent months traveling through space following rumors about the cruel Galactic Empire. Now he was finally face to face with the bullies who enslaved peaceful worlds. The bridge of Iron Thunder was nothing like the elegant alien ships. Everything was made of thick steel, and heavy metal pipes ran along the ceiling carrying steam and cooling fluid. Lights flickered and engines rumbled with power that shook the entire vessel. But every system was built to last through the worst battles. Humans had learned long ago that pretty things broke easily when the shooting started. Empire ships, this is Captain Lee Jun-ho of the Earth Defense Force. Jun-ho spoke into his communication system. We know about the worlds you have enslaved and the innocent people you have killed. We demand that you stop your attacks immediately and release all prisoners. The alien officers listening to this message started laughing so hard they could barely breathe. One small ship demanding that the mighty Galactic Empire surrender. It was the funniest thing they had heard in decades. Captain Du-yun wiped tears from his eyes as he activated his weapon systems. Unknown vessel. Du-yun replied with amusement in his voice. You have exactly 10 seconds to turn around and leave our territory. If you do not obey, we will blast you into tiny pieces that will drift in space forever. 10-9-8. But instead of running away, the human ship did something that shocked every alien watching. Jun-ho ordered his engines to full power, and the Iron Thunder shot forward like a bullet fired from a giant gun. The massive fusion reactors in the ship's belly roared to life, pushing out flames that burned brighter than small suns. Steam exploded from cooling vents as the ship accelerated faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The Empire officers watched in amazement as this crude metal vessel moved with impossible speed. Their own ships were fast, but they relied on antigrav systems that took time to build up power. The human ship used raw chemical thrust that could accelerate instantly. From 0 to maximum velocity, the aliens had never seen anything move so fast except for their smallest fighter craft. Captain Du-yun's confidence began to crack as he watched the enemy ship charge straight at his fleet. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Enemy ships were supposed to run away when faced with superior firepower. They were not supposed to attack 20 warships with just one vessel. Sir, Lieutenant Kim Hae-won called out from the scanner station. The enemy ship is moving at incredible speed and its hull temperature is rising rapidly. The metal appears to be glowing red hot from the friction of its passage through space. That is impossible, Du-yun replied. How can any ship move that fast without tearing itself apart? The answer became clear as the Iron Thunder got closer. The entire vessel was built like a flying fortress with armor plating thicker than a building. Every surface was covered with heat-resistant metal that could survive temperatures hot enough to melt rock. The ship was not just big and fast, it was also tougher than anything the Empire had ever encountered. Jun-ho smiled grimly as he watched the pretty alien ships scramble to form battle formations. Their crystal hulls sparkled like jewelry in the starlight, but he knew that beautiful things were often fragile. The Iron Thunder might look ugly with its smoking exhaust and crude metal plating, but it had been built by people who understood that war was brutal and dirty fire. All plasma cannons, Du-yun ordered as panic crept into his voice. 20 crystal ships opened fire at once, creating streams of purple energy that lit up space like fireworks. The plasma beams were hot enough to vaporize any known material and accurate enough to hit targets thousands of miles away. This barrage should have turned the enemy ship into glowing gas. But when the plasma bolts struck the Iron Thunder, something incredible happened. The energy beams splashed against the hull like water hitting a rock. Some of the plasma was absorbed by the metal armor while the rest bounced off in different directions. The human ship continued its charge without even slowing down, its dark hull now glowing cherry red from absorbed heat. Impossible, screamed Du-yun as he watched his most powerful weapons fail completely. How can primitive metal resist our plasma cannons? Nothing can survive that much energy. The truth was that humans had spent centuries learning how to build things that could survive anything. The Iron Thunder's hull was made of compressed titanium steel mixed with carbon fiber and ceramic composites. Every layer was designed to absorb different types of energy and spread the heat over the entire surface, while the Empire had focused on making their ships beautiful. Humans had focused on making them unbreakable. Now it was the Iron Thunder's turn to show what human weapons could do. The space around the Iron Thunder exploded with light as Captain Junho opened fire with his main weapons. The aliens had never seen anything like what happened next. Instead of elegant energy beams, the human ship shot massive chunks of metal that moved faster than lightning. These were not fancy plasma bolts or crystal rays, but simple iron bullets, the size of small cars, launched by explosions that could level mountains. The first shot from the Iron Thunder's main cannon hit the Empire flagship, Crystal Dawn, right in the center. The metal projectile punched through the beautiful crystal hull like a knife through paper. The alien ship shuddered and cracked as the bullet tore through deck after deck before exploding out the other side. In seconds, the pride of the Empire fleet had a smoking hole running from front to back. Captain Du-yun stared in horror as his perfect ship fell apart around him. Emergency lights flashed red and alarms screamed warnings throughout the vessel. The crystal hull that had seemed so strong was crumbling like glass. His crew ran in panic as sections of the ship began to break away and drift into space. The beautiful plasma conduits that powered their weapons were shattered beyond repair. "Sir, the ship is breaking apart," Lieutenant Kim Hae-won shouted over the noise of tearing metal. "We need to abandon ship immediately." But before Du-yun could give the order, the Iron Thunder fired again. This shot hit the Empire cruiser Starlight Blade, and the result was even more devastating. The heavy metal bullet struck the ship right where the crystal hull was thinnest. The entire vessel split in half like someone had chopped it with a giant axe. Both pieces tumbled through space, trailing glowing debris and escaping atmosphere. Lieutenant Park Min-ji watched from her battle station on another Empire ship as her friends died in the vacuum of space. She had trained for years to serve on these beautiful crystal vessels, but nothing had prepared her for this kind of brutal warfare. The human weapons were not sophisticated or elegant, they were just incredibly destructive. The Iron Thunder kept firing, and each shot destroyed another piece of the Empire fleet. The human cannons worked like giant versions of the primitive weapons that cave dwellers might use, but scaled up to incredible size and power. Every metal bullet was guided by computer systems that could calculate the exact path needed to hit a moving target. The aliens could not understand how such simple weapons could be so accurate and deadly. "Fire everything we have," Du-yun screamed into his communication device. "All ships, concentrate your plasma beams on that metal monster." The remaining Empire ships formed a circle around the Iron Thunder and fired all their weapons at once. The space between them filled with purple energy as dozens of plasma cannons shot their deadly beams, but the human ship just absorbed the energy and kept fighting. Its thick metal armor was designed to handle temperatures hotter than the surface of stars. Captain Junho walked calmly around his bridge as the alien weapons pounded his ship. The hull temperature gauges showed red-hot readings, but the metal held strong. His crew worked at their stations without fear because they knew their vessel could survive anything the pretty crystal ships could throw at them. "Load the main cannon with high explosive rounds," Junho ordered, "and prepare to fire the secondary batteries." The humans had brought more than just simple metal bullets. They had explosive shells that could destroy entire city blocks and cluster bombs that split apart to hit multiple targets. The Iron Thunder's biggest weapon was a monster cannon that ran almost the full length of the ship. When it fired, the explosion lit up space like a new sun was being born. The shell it launched was the size of a small building and packed with enough explosive power to crack a mountain. The target was the Empire's command ship, Royal Crystal, and the result was spectacular. The enormous shell struck the alien vessel and exploded with such force that nearby ships were damaged by the shockwave. The Royal Crystal simply disappeared in a ball of fire and expanding gas. Where moments before had been the Empire's second most powerful warship, nothing remained except glowing debris that sparkled like deadly snow against the black of space. The surviving Empire ships tried to retreat, but the Iron Thunder was faster than they expected. The human fusion engines burned hotter than stars and could push the massive ship at speeds that defied belief. One by one, Junho hunted down the fleeing aliens. Each shot from his cannons destroyed another proud Empire vessel, until space was filled with floating wreckage. "This cannot be happening," Duyun whispered as he watched his fleet die around him. "We are the Galactic Empire. We have the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. How can one primitive ship defeat our entire fleet?" The answer was that humans had spent thousands of years learning how to fight wars, while the Empire had grown soft from centuries of easy victories. The aliens had focused on making their ships beautiful and their weapons elegant, but humans had focused on making their tools of war as deadly as possible. Every system on the Iron Thunder was designed by people who understood that battles were won by whoever could hit hardest and survive longest. The Iron Thunder's hull was covered with smaller weapons that the aliens had not even noticed at first. These secondary guns opened fire, now filling space with streams of metal bullets that tore through the crystal ships like tissue paper. The Empire vessels were not built to withstand this kind of punishment. Their hulls cracked and shattered under the constant bombardment. Lieutenant Minji's ship Star Jewel was one of the last to survive, but not for long. A stream of bullets from the Iron Thunder's secondary guns stitched across its crystal hull, creating dozens of holes that vented atmosphere into space. She watched helplessly as her beautiful ship died around her, the elegant crystal walls that had seemed so strong proving to be as fragile as glass ornaments. In less than an hour, the entire Third Fleet was destroyed. 20 of the Empire's finest warships had been reduced to glowing debris by one human vessel. The Iron Thunder floated among the wreckage, its dark metal hull scarred, but unbroken steam still poured from its cooling vents and flames still shot from its massive engines. The ugly ship had proven that sometimes crude and brutal was better than pretty and sophisticated. Captain Junho looked out at the field of destroyed alien ships and felt no joy in the victory. These crystal vessels had been beautiful in their own way, and the crews inside them had been living beings with families and dreams, but they had chosen to serve an empire that enslaved innocent worlds and killed anyone who stood in their way. Send a message to the Empire capital. Junho told his communication officer, "Tell them that Earth remembers every world they destroyed and every species they enslaved. Tell them that humanity is coming and we will not stop until every enslaved world is free." The message went out across space, carrying news that would shake the Galactic Empire to its core. One human ship had destroyed an entire fleet using weapons that seemed primitive but proved devastatingly effective. The age of the Empire's easy dominance was over, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The news of the Third Fleet's complete destruction spread through the Galactic Empire like a deadly plague. Admiral Tejo sat in his command center staring at empty screens where 20 proud warships used to show up on his sensors. Now there was nothing but floating debris and emergency beacons from escape pods. The impossible had happened, and nobody could explain how one primitive ship had defeated the Empire's finest fleet. Emergency meetings were called on every world under Empire control. Generals and admirals who had never known defeat gathered in crystal conference rooms, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The holographic recordings of the battle showed things that should not have been possible: energy weapons that bounced off metal armor, crude cannons that destroyed ships built with centuries of advanced technology. A single vessel moving faster than their entire fleet. "This makes no sense," General Li Haijin said as she watched the battle footage for the 10th time. "Our plasma weapons can melt through any known material, but they had no effect on that metal ship and those projectiles they fired. How can simple bullets move so fast and hit so accurately?" Admiral Tejo rubbed his tired eyes and tried to think clearly. "We need more information about this enemy. Send every spy drone. We have to study their technology, find out how many ships they have and where they came from. The fate of the Empire depends on understanding this threat." Captain So-min was chosen to lead the reconnaissance mission because she commanded the fastest and most advanced stealth ship in the fleet. The Shadow Crystal was invisible to most sensors and could slip through space without being detected. She had used this ship to spy on rebellious worlds and gather intelligence about enemy movements, but nothing had prepared her for what she would find when she reached the battle site. The debris field stretched for thousands of miles in every direction. Pieces of A's crystal hulls floated like deadly snow, while emergency beacons blinked their desperate signals into the void. The Iron Thunder sat in the middle of this destruction, looking like a dark metal mountain. Its hull was scarred and blackened from the battle, but the ship was clearly still operational. Steam poured from cooling vents and lights moved across its surface as the crew made repairs, but Somin's blood turned to ice when she saw what else was in the area. The Iron Thunder was no longer alone. Dozens of ships had appeared from the depths of space, and they were all built in the same brutal style as the first vessel. Some were long and thin like flying spears, while others were wide and flat like metal pancakes. A few were so big they looked like floating cities with thousands of weapons poking out from their hulls. Somin tried to count the human ships, but kept losing track as more vessels appeared from behind asteroids and space debris. Each one looked different, but they all shared the same practical design philosophy. Nothing was built for beauty, everything was designed for war. The ships had thick armor plating, massive engines, and more weapons than seemed possible to fit on any vessel. The largest ship in the human fleet was beyond anything Somin had ever imagined. It was longer than the Empire's biggest space station and bristled with so many cannons that it looked like a metal porcupine. The hull was dark gray and covered with what appeared to be launch bays for smaller ships. Steam and smoke poured from hundreds of vents, while massive engines at the rear burned with flames that could be seen from millions of miles away. Somin activated her most sensitive scanners to get detailed readings on the human fleet, but the instruments immediately overloaded. The ships produced so much energy that they appeared as blazing suns on her screen. The power output from just one human vessel was greater than an entire Empire battle group. Her equipment was not designed to measure energy levels. This High Commander Park Sung-ho was monitoring communications from his position in the Empire Intelligence Center when he intercepted human radio transmissions. The aliens had translation computers that could understand most languages, but the human communications were filled with technical terms they had never heard before. The carbon creatures talked about fusion reactors, railgun velocities, and kinetic penetrators like these were common every day. Things Sir Sung-ho reported to his superior. The humans appear to be using controlled nuclear fusion as their primary power source. They are generating energy by forcing hydrogen atoms to combine into helium, the same process that powers stars. But this should be impossible to control safely for space travel. The implications were terrifying. If the humans had mastered fusion power, they had access to virtually unlimited energy. Their ships could operate at full power for years without refueling. While Empire vessels needed to return to crystal charging stations every few months, the energy advantage alone would make human ships nearly invincible in any prolonged battle. More disturbing reports came in from other spy missions. The humans had not just stumbled across Empire territory by accident. They had been watching and planning for a long time. Hidden observation posts scattered throughout the galaxy had been monitoring Empire activities for decades. The carbon creatures knew about every enslaved world, every military base, and every weakness in the Empire's defenses. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Jae-sung was the Empire's top strategic analyst, and his findings made the situation even more hopeless. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Taeho, "the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered before. They use tactics that suggest thousands of years of warfare experience. Their ships are positioned to support each other, and their weapons are designed to exploit specific weaknesses in our crystal technology." The truth was even worse than the Empire feared. Humans had indeed spent millennia fighting wars against their own species. They had experienced world wars that killed millions of people and had developed military technology through countless conflicts. Every human ship was designed by people who understood that the enemy would try to kill them in the most efficient way. Possibly Somin continued her surveillance mission, but made a terrible mistake. She moved too close to the human fleet, trying to get better sensor readings. A small fighter ship detached from the main group and flew straight toward her position. Its engines left a trail of blue fire that lit up space like a comet. The human pilot had somehow detected her invisible ship. The fighter was tiny compared to her stealth vessel, but it moved with deadly precision. Somin tried to escape, but the human ship was faster than anything she had ever seen. It matched her every turn and dodge, staying close behind her like a hunting predator. The pilot was clearly experienced in space combat and knew exactly how to catch a fleeing enemy. Somin fired her ship's defensive weapons, but the human fighter avoided every shot with impossible skill. The enemy pilots seemed to predict her moves before she made them, dancing through the energy beams like they were moving in slow motion. The fighter's own weapons opened fire, sending streams of metal bullets that sparked off her crystal hull within. Minutes So-min realized she could not escape. The human fighter was superior in every way. It was faster, more maneuverable, and had better weapons. Her beautiful stealth ship was being outflown by what appeared to be just a scout vessel, if this was what their small ships could do. What were their battleships capable of? The fighter did not destroy her ship. Instead, it used some kind of tractor beam to capture her vessel and drag it toward the main human fleet. So-min watched in terror as the massive warships grew larger on her screen. Each one was a floating fortress covered with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. The humans had not just defeated the Third Fleet, they had brought enough firepower to conquer the entire empire. As her ship was pulled toward the human flagship, So-min realized that everything the empire believed about itself was wrong. They were not the most advanced species in the galaxy, they were not invincible, and their crystal technology was not superior. The carbon-based life forms they had dismissed as primitives had built a war machine that could crush them. Like insects, the Galactic Empire was about to face an enemy that was older, stronger, and far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. The final battle for the galaxy began when Emperor Kyungmin made his last desperate gamble to save the Galactic Empire. He had gathered every remaining warship from across 12 star systems, creating the largest fleet in the Empire's history. Over 1,000 crystal vessels filled the space around the capital world, their hulls gleaming like stars in the darkness. But even this massive armada looked small compared to the human fleet that approached them. Admiral Kim Dae-yoon stood on the bridge of Earth's hammer, watching the alien formation through thick metal windows. The Empire ships were still beautiful even in their final moments. Crystal hulls caught starlight and turned it into rainbow colors while plasma conduits glowed with deadly energy, but beauty could not stop the metal bullets and explosive shells that human weapons fired. The Emperor had one last weapon that he hoped would turn the tide of battle. The Starkiller was a massive space station hidden behind the capital world's largest moon. It was powered by energy drawn directly from the system's sun and could fire a beam capable of turning entire planets into vapor. This weapon had never been used in combat, but its destructive power was beyond imagination. Captain Oh Dong-wook commanded the human heavy cruiser Seoul's Pride, and he was leading the final assault on the Empire's capital system. His ship and 50 others punched through the alien defenses like bullets through paper. The Empire's crystal vessels shattered under the impact of human railgun shells, their fragments sparkling like deadly snow against the black of space. But the aliens had learned some lessons from their previous defeats. Instead of trying to match human firepower, they used speed and numbers to their advantage. Swarms of small fighter craft attacked the human ships from all directions, while larger vessels provided covering fire. The Empire forces fought with the desperation of people who knew their entire civilization was at stake. The battle raged for 3 days and nights. As measured by the capital world's rotation, human ships advanced steadily through the Empire's defenses, destroying everything in their path, but the aliens made them pay for every mile of space. They used suicide tactics, ramming damaged ships into human vessels and detonating crystal power cores to create massive explosions. Lieutenant Commander Park Soo-jin watched from her battle station as the Empire's proudest ships died around her. The Royal Guard fleet that had never known defeat was being systematically destroyed by human weapons that seemed to grow more accurate with each shot. The carbon creatures had turned warfare into a science, and the Empire's elegant tactics were no match for their brutal efficiency. Emperor Kyungmin made his final decision as he watched his fleet crumble before his eyes. Activate the Starkiller, he commanded. Target the largest human ship and fire at full power. If we cannot win this battle, at least we can show them that the Empire will not surrender without inflicting massive damage. The Starkiller emerged from behind the moon like a metal mountain. Its surface was covered with energy collectors that focused the sun's power into a single devastating beam. When it fired, the weapon created a lance of pure energy that could burn through any known material. The beam struck Earth's hammer squarely in the center, where it should have vaporized the massive flagship instantly, but Admiral Kim had prepared for exactly this kind of desperate attack. The human flagship activated something the aliens had never seen before, a gravitational shield that bent space itself around the ship. The Starkiller's beam struck this impossible barrier and was reflected back toward its source like light bouncing off a mirror. The reflected energy beam struck the Starkiller with the same devastating force it had been designed to deliver. The massive space station exploded in a burst of light so bright it could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Empire's ultimate weapon had been turned against itself, destroying their last hope of victory in a single, catastrophic moment. With the Starkiller gone, the human fleet advanced. On the capital world itself, Emperor Kyungmin stood on his palace balcony watching as human ships filled the sky above his crystal city. These vessels were scarred and blackened from battle, but they still moved with deadly purpose. Steam poured from their cooling vents while weapon turrets tracked across the sky like the eyes of hunting predators. The Emperor finally understood what he was facing. The humans were not just another alien species with advanced technology, they were evolutions. Answer to the question of what happens when intelligence is given to a species that refuses to give up every human ship, every weapon. Every tactic was born from a civilization that had survived every disaster their homeworld could create. Admiral Kim's voice echoed across the capital world as her ships surrounded the planet. People of the Empire, she announced, the time for violence is over. Your fleets are destroyed. Your weapons are useless and your Emperor's power is broken, but we did not come here to conquer you. We came to offer you something your Empire never gave to others, a choice. The terms Admiral Kim offered were simple: join the new Galactic Federation as equals and help build a galaxy where all species can live freely, or continue to support the Empire's system of slavery and face the consequences. The choice would be made by each world individually, not by the Emperor or his generals. The revolution that followed was swift and largely bloodless. Planet after planet declared independence from the Empire, often with the help of human advisors who taught them how to defend themselves. The species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves free to govern their own worlds and make their own decisions. Captain Junho of the Iron Thunder became a hero throughout the galaxy as the man who had fired the first shots against Empire tyranny. His ugly metal ship was put on display in museums while children from dozens of species learned about the day humanity came to their rescue. But Junho himself preferred to keep flying, taking his ship to distant corners of the galaxy where oppression still existed. The former Empire's citizens discovered that humans, despite their fearsome military power, were actually more interested in building than destroying. Human engineers helped rebuild worlds damaged by centuries of exploitation. Human teachers shared knowledge freely, and human doctors provided medical care to any species that needed it. The galaxy learned that the most dangerous predators could also be the most loyal protectors. Human ships patrolled trade routes, keeping them safe from pirates, while human diplomats helped settle disputes between different species. The same technology that had destroyed the Empire's fleet was now used to protect the weak and defend the innocent. Within a year, the Galactic Empire existed only in history books, replaced by the Galactic Federation, a union of free worlds protected by the Earth Defense Force. The new government was based on principles the Empire had never understood: equality, justice, and the right of all intelligent beings to determine their own fate. Emperor Kyungmin spent his final years in exile on a small agricultural world, learning to grow food with his own hands. For the first time in his life, the Crystal Palace was turned into a museum where visitors could learn about the dangers of unlimited power and the importance of treating all species with respect. Admiral Kim Deum became the first supreme commander of the Federation Defense Force, but she insisted that the position be elected rather than inherited. She knew that power corrupts and that even the best intentions can lead to tyranny if left unchecked. The humans who had fought so hard for freedom were determined to preserve it for future generations, and somewhere in the depths of space, new human exploration fleets continued their journey to distant stars. Each ship carried the same message that had toppled the Galactic Empire: we come in peace, but we are prepared for war. The galaxy was now under the protection of a species that had learned the hard way that freedom must be earned and defended by those strong enough to fight for it. The Age of the Galactic Empire was over, and the age of human guardianship, ha! Captain So-min sat in her captured ship watching as human soldiers boarded her vessel through an airlock. They wore heavy metal suits that looked like walking tanks and carried weapons she did not recognize. The humans were surprisingly gentle as they escorted her to their flagship, but she could feel the deadly power they represented. Each soldier moved with the confidence of someone who had seen real combat and survived. The human flagship was called Earth's Hammer, and walking through its corridors was like entering a different world. Everything was built for function rather than beauty. Thick metal pipes ran along the ceiling carrying steam and power cables. The walls were lined with damage control stations and emergency supplies. The ship was designed to keep fighting even if half of it was destroyed. Admiral Kim Da-yoon met So-min in a plain metal room with no decorations or luxury items. The human woman was tall and strong, with scars on her hands that spoke of years in space. Her uniform was simple gray fabric without the jewels and gold that Empire officers wore. But her eyes held intelligence and determination that made So-min afraid. "We are not going to hurt you," the Admiral said in perfect Galactic standard language. "Your ship will be returned to you along with a message for your leaders. We want them to understand exactly what they are dealing with before more people die unnecessarily." So-min was amazed that the humans could speak her language so well. But Admiral Kim explained that they had been studying Empire communications for decades. Hidden listening posts throughout the galaxy had intercepted millions of transmissions, allowing human computers to learn every language used by the Empire's subject races. The message Admiral Kim recorded would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Empire. She sat in front of a camera, with the massive weapons of her flagship visible through the windows behind her. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but filled with the authority of someone who commanded unimaginable power. "People of the Empire," she began, "we are the humans of Earth, and we have been watching you for many years. We know about the planets you have enslaved, the species you have exterminated, and the countless innocent lives you have destroyed. We came to your territory hoping to negotiate a peaceful solution, but you chose to attack our ambassador ship instead." The Admiral paused to let her words sink in, then continued, "Now you will see why the people of Earth are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We did not become the dominant life form on our world by being weak or gentle. We survived ice ages that killed most other life forms. We endured plagues that should have wiped us out completely. We fought wars that taught us how to destroy entire civilizations." Min felt her blood turn cold as she listened to these words. The humans were not just another alien species, they were the survivors of a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. Every challenge that would have destroyed other races had only made humans stronger and more determined. Admiral Kim continued her message. "Your crystal ships are beautiful, but beauty does not win wars. Your plasma weapons are elegant, but elegance does not protect innocent lives. We build our ships to survive the worst battles imaginable because we know that peace can only be maintained by those strong enough to defend it." The recording was transmitted across the entire Galactic Empire, reaching every world, every space station, and every ship in the fleet. Billions of beings watched as this human woman calmly explained why their mighty empire was doomed to fall. Emperor Kyungmin received the message in his crystal palace, and for the first time in his long life he felt genuine fear. Emergency councils were called on the capital world as the Empire's leaders tried to understand what they were facing. General Yoon Tae-young had spent decades studying military tactics, but the human approach to warfare was unlike anything in the Empire's database. They did not fight for glory or conquest, they fought to protect those who could not protect themselves. The humans have been preparing for this confrontation for generations. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Jae-sung reported to the assembled military commanders. "They have studied our weaknesses, identified our strategic vulnerabilities, and positioned their forces to maximum advantage. This is not a random attack. It is the culmination of a long-term plan." The intelligence reports that flooded in painted a picture of human capabilities that seemed impossible to believe. Their ships used fusion reactors that could operate for decades without refueling. Their armor was made from materials that could withstand temperatures hot enough to vaporize planets. Their weapons could fire projectiles at velocities approaching the speed of light. But the most frightening aspect of human technology was not its power. but its redundancy, every system had backup systems and every backup had its own backup. Human ships could lose half their equipment and still remain dangerous in battle, while Empire vessels became helpless if their crystal matrices were damaged. The humans also fought differently than any opponent the Empire had faced before. Instead of elegant duels between individual ships, they used coordinated group tactics where every vessel supported the others. Their formations were designed to concentrate firepower on single targets while protecting damaged ships from counterattack. General Yun studied recordings of human military exercises that their spies had captured. The carbon creatures practiced warfare, constantly running simulations of battles against opponents with superior technology. They had developed tactics for fighting enemies who were faster, stronger, and more numerous than themselves, because on their homeworld they had often faced exactly those situations. Your Majesty, the general reported to Emperor Kyungmin, the humans do not just have better weapons, they have a completely different philosophy of war. They believe that conflict is inevitable, and that the only way to ensure peace is to be prepared for the worst possible scenarios. The Emperor sat on his crystal throne, feeling the weight of 3 centuries of easy dominance crumbling around him. The Empire had grown soft from decades of fighting primitive opponents who could barely organize resistance against crystal technology, but the humans were not primitives. They were the products of a world that had forged them in the fires of constant struggle. Admiral Taeho received reports from across the Empire's territory, and each one brought worse news. Human ships were appearing in multiple star systems, moving with purpose and coordination that suggested a master plan. The carbon creatures were not just attacking randomly, they were systematically dismantling the Empire's ability to project power. The human fleet included specialized vessels for every type of warfare. There were fast attack ships that could hunt down fleeing enemies, heavy battleships that could slug it out with the strongest fortifications, and massive carriers that launched swarms of smaller fighters. Each ship type was perfectly designed for its specific role in the larger battle plan. Most terrifying of all were the human logistics ships. These vessels carried supplies, ammunition, and replacement parts that would allow the fleet to operate independently for years. The Empire's crystal ships needed to return to charging stations regularly, but the human fleet was completely self-sufficient. They could fight a war of attrition that would slowly grind down any opponent. The Empire's citizens watched the sky with growing fear as human ships appeared over their worlds. These vessels did not attack civilian targets, but their presence sent a clear message. The age of Empire dominance was ending, and a new power was rising to take its place. The carbon creatures that had once been dismissed as primitives were about to reshape the entire galaxy. Admiral Kim Dae-yoon stood on the bridge of Earth's Hammer, looking out at the growing human fleet. Reinforcements continued to arrive from Earth, carrying fresh crews and supplies for the long campaign ahead. The humans had not come to conquer worlds for themselves. They had come to liberate every species that lived under the Empire's cruel rule. The final phase of humanity's plan was about to begin, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same.